Before I begin, I want to make clear to something we can agree on to persons like Al Soma, for example, who wanted me banned from Seattle Central Community College. Um, Clearly, when administration of a major university, whose power and influence extends to a large city's only major metropolitan newspaper, for example, as well as various ties to syndicates enjoying celebrity artists um, and fellowships, persons of prominence in politics, and so on. The way the University of Pittsburgh does, when administration of a gang like that, murder a senior faculty who's distinguished and has served his entire career with them, they are committing a betrayal. So when I say that the University of Pittsburgh is treacherous and betrayed my father, um, you would assume that having weighed the burden of evidence, I've come to the conclusion that that's what they did. And if you shared the assessment that I bring to the burden of evidence, you would agree. So the basis of your disagreement is you don't think the burden of evidence suggests that, or you don't believe that anybody should care that the University of Pittsburgh murdered a senior faculty member who was a distinguished um, and emeritus. So when you look at the situation now exists in Licky Chops, Seattle, it comes from the murder of my father at the University of Pittsburgh. It's the same gang poaching. They call themselves the Green Party. Well, I know a little bit about how they fixture themselves at the University of Pittsburgh. There was a particularly interesting woman named Kate McFerrin, whose father was in social anthropology at the University of Pittsburgh. Social anthropology, of course, is the maneuvering factor in Schulman and Gabriel's confiscation of their own script for Ono and her revenge attack on my father as a voice from the radio of the San Jacinto off the coast of Japan. McFerrin went to Germany, and for some strange reason, she broke her silence towards me, her hatred towards me, as the person who had beaten her in a rivalry for the scholarship to the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts, for which she never forgave me. She went to Germany and inundated me with letter after letter after letter after letter after letter. The only other person who'd ever done that was Gail Burstyn. In fact, she seemed to be alluding to many of the things that Gail Burstyn said. I had had a courtship with someone who she evidently had a romantic inclination for, another reason never to forgive me, someone with the peculiar index name of Mars Den. Well, Kay McFerrin ended up with David Douglas of robotics, whose father had said to me, if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. How interesting that the social anthropology department produced the neighbor of Schulman, and David Douglas also um, commenced from large Indian women community. with the openest scam that provided the NAACP its licky chops claims for Trumpy Tune. How interesting. They served Midori Goto. How interesting. You can see all this in the Telltale clip at Alias Little Boy. The two girls running to the water, one holding a ball, followed by a third girl who spreads her legs as she jumps into the water, followed by Mesmer of Ringo Starr, and the Japanese girl trot, trot, trot out to a black guitar player who waves to her as they're sealing a bond. She goes past the hollow cannon, which is a symbol of Civil War in Pittsburgh. And she tumbles up a hill on her bicycle and breaks her glasses while these little sweeties hold aloft cantaloupes as though the queer ball's head. And she rides off smirking most smug. And this is an illustration of the semiotic computer that the beanies at Microsoft UW Dialectical have narrated their reality show with. So, what we see is the pride of the distinguished race, catering to the KKK as they fulfill the claim that if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. My father led a Liberian Peace Corps movement. He held doors open for black people. He refused the University of Georgia the offer of the presidency when they refused to desegregate. What better a person to licky chops kill to show that the white was inferior for Master Charlie? So we have these black people in Seattle leading a campaign that reminds me nothing so much as the vampire betting fly eater in Bram Stoker's Bela Lugosi film. Not when I can have a nice big juicy spider, he says. And that's the whole essence of Obama's catering to the pussy ball game. I mean, why should I have the dignity of the United States when I can have a nice big juicy Japanese virgin and castrate the white? I mean, that's the mindset. That's the mindset. I'm not. I mean, I'm doing it justice. I mean, that's, and of course, they use the whole thing as a curve of some sort, justifying spreading AIDS because it wasn't man-made. To prove it was man-made, they brought down the World Trade Center to prove they would never do that, and so on. This is the logic of Yoko Ono and Ming-No Wen sort of playing this dippity-doo shell game with the licky chops of Hop Kendricks, who are manufacturing pornography on campus because they understand where poor Jimmy is coming from, decide to make a wooden nickel out of it. And the reason secret lies in, Proctor's take on politics in Pittsburgh. They didn't like Martin Luther King because he was an outsider. They're certainly not going to like my old man. And he was in an NAACP that was owned and directed basically by one of Gail Burston's friends, a woman named Joey. So it's deranged, and for leadership of the black community to ignore that this is being paraded as the dignity of the distinguished race. That they can grow up anybody they want to. They can kill white bitch Susie and all this because you crossed the race line over Louis. It was entrapment from the Bobby Yendel school of David Dukeism. And it's nothing better than that, that's for sure. But this is UW Dialectical at its finest. The things that they keep under their beanie are really showcase the extreme edge of ecologists in the Democratic Party. Pure weirdos like Jay Inslee and Al Gore. What business do they have using a deaf child for something like that? I'd like a response from Gallaudet instead of your ninny stuff about, oh, somebody should direct him when to speak and when not to. What's a campus one night stand supposed to mean? Well, you know, these are supposed these sexaholic purient castrators from Britain think that they're proving Ouspensky this way. You know, and the mania with which Hollywood has gone about commanding and controlling it as a hybrid war station is, to say the least, blood curdling. And but you can't get anywhere with it because the Black Panthers are in full monger of grudge law about it and so on. But anyway, it comes from Axis Germany. That's the point. I mean, it's the social anthropology of the University of Pittsburgh and their Fernhalder Bridge nature of reality stuff. Doesn't amount to anything I would measure dignity by.